And so far it looks good. Oh, a special good morning. I'm sorry if I start strangely. Anybody that's joining us on Facebook, we have new system in place, so hopefully issues of the past won't be an issue this morning. So now I settled on Genesis chapter 1 this morning, but before we went all the way through the book of Revelation, and we could have an exam over the book of Revelation if you'd like, or we could go on to Genesis. How many, all in favor of doing a final exam on the book of they want to do the exam. You can't see that right now, but they're all hoping. But so due to time, we're going to move over. And so we've seen how it ends, okay? We've gone through the entire book of Revelation, and we see how all this ends. Now we're going to go to the other end. We're going to go to the first page of the Bible, and we're going to start there. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. If I asked you, could you tell me what's in the first chapter of Genesis? Without looking, could you, I bet you could probably come up with a rough idea of what is in there. Because you know how it starts. It starts out in the beginning. And in the beginning what? Creates everything. Okay. Well, and so it's probably one of those chapters that if you're like me, I remember studying when I was a little child, you get to know it really, really well, and then you move on to other things. You see this beautiful tie I'm wearing this morning? Isn't this a gorgeous tie?
Colorful. I can't make out what it is, but it's colorful.
I'm not sure there is anything. I've had this thing forever, and I honestly can't remember the last time I wore it, and I can't remember even how I received it. And I think when I got it, I thought, well, there's kind of like cubes and stuff, and I'm not really sure what the point is. So it never has been a favorite tie of mine. So yesterday I was going through my ties. One of the biggest decisions I make every week, of course, is what tie I'm going to put on. And I saw this one, it's sitting way in the back, and I pulled it out, and I thought, I don't even remember the last time, and I was looking at all the little squares, wondering what were they thinking. And as I started to move it around, all of a sudden I start seeing all these little squirrely marks and circles and ovals. And it turns out if you just hold it the way I'd always held it, you don't see any of that. It's like once I started moving it around and paying attention, oh, wait a minute, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. And I don't know that you would even notice that, talking to me when you come in here, but if you take it and start moving, it's like, oh, that was there all this time, and I had no idea. I've got a hunch that the Bible is like this. We're going to be looking at some passages of Scripture that you may be pretty familiar with them. But if you stop and think about it, what has been there all along that I've never, ever noticed before? And that's what I'm going to kind of be looking for as we get into the book of Genesis. In the beginning, when God created the heavens, or was creating the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. While a wind from God, or the Spirit of God, in Hebrew the word for spirit and wind is the same word. So any good Bible is going to have at least a note saying spirit, wind, you go ahead and decide. Because we don't really know what they meant, maybe even both. A wind, the Spirit of God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, let there be light. And there was light. The very first thing he does is what? He creates light. Okay? By the way, who's the light of the world? Who? And then Jesus, and then he said, who was? You and me. This is a theme. It's the very first thing, and it's something that plays throughout the Bible. In verse 4, God saw the light was what? That it was good. That it was good. And God separated the light from darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. The Hebrew people, their day starts at sundown, right? So it's nighttime, daytime, that's a day. Okay, and this is the very first day. Now, there's going to be how many days? You can look at any calendar and answer this. How many days? There's going to be 7. It turns out 1, 2, and 3 go together. Days 4, 5, and 6 go together. Turns out 1 and 4 go together. 2 and 5 go together. And 3 and 6 go together. And you tell me how as we continue this. The first day, light, it is good. God said, let there be a dome or a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it separate the waters from the waters. So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome or the firmament. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. Okay, now, in their way of thinking, there's a lot of water up there, and there's a lot of water down here. And a lot of it is actually below the earth, as they're saying. If you go to the Holy Land, in a lot of places, there are springs. Water just comes out of the ground. Okay, so in their way of thinking, there's a lot of water up there, there's a lot of water down here, and so God begins to separate all of this. This will make even more sense when we get to the story of Noah and the flood. Do you remember how that whole event is described? It's described in a way that makes sense to them. So God is separating water so that now we can go on and have what? That was, where did I stop? 9? God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was what? That it was good. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was what? It was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. Okay, those first 3 go together. God has created light. He has created the sky and the water and the land and the plants. Okay? What's he doing? He's setting the stage. Okay? All of this so that in verse 14, God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky, of the firmament, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years. Let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 4th day. Okay, the sun, the moon, the stars. One of my earliest memories was looking at the sky, and I've been an astronomy, space nerd my entire life. I'm envious of you that are out here where it's dark enough to see a comet going by, because you sure couldn't see it in Terre Haute, or even the Northern Lights. And I don't know that you can really understand this or appreciate it unless you live in the desert. One of the big joys when I go to New Mexico to see my sister, the Milky Way is unlike even what you see here. It is It continues, the darker it gets, the more the Milky Way takes on a three-dimensional form to it. And you begin to understand what these people would have experienced, what they would have known. In verse 20, God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was what? It was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas. Let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was, of course, good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind." Let's make people in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. You know, people have often asked, well, who's we? If God's doing this, who's we? Some people think it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I don't really buy that, but it's more of a royal we, that God is in heaven with all of his heavenly host, his angels, and saying, we are doing this. We are creating this and making all of this possible. And he makes a people. So God created humankind, people, in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. To be in somebody's image means you look so much like them you can't tell them apart. They would often talking about a son being in the image of his father. What they meant was when you saw that young man, you couldn't tell, was it the son or the father I just saw? That was his idea, that we wouldn't simply be a little hint of some aspect of God, but in ways that we don't understand, that when God looks at you, when people look at you and they look at me, somehow they should be seeing God himself. That's what the image of God is about. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See," or look, "I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food, and to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. Very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. It starts out with good. This is an incredible, amazing, wonderful, good thing that God does. You hear me say this all the time. Faith in Jesus is a celebrating faith. It's a joyful faith because we see everything as a miracle of God. And God's intention is that everything and everybody be very good. We get hung up on this. Do you realize now, the first 3 days he's setting the stage, he's preparing everything for the sun, the moon, the birds and the plants and people, and all of this is happening. It's the most beautiful, it's poetry is what it is. I mean, but our problem is as Westerners, we want to figure out what? Exactly how did you do it? How did you get this? How did you make that? And how did you put this together with that? And we get, and I think I've told you this before, when I was in college at Virginia Tech, they had a big special presentation, a debate, public debate. Turns out one of the big authors of a literal interpretation of the Bible was from our campus there, and he was going to talk about how God made life, and they also had an expert on evolution who was going to talk about how evolution brought about life, okay? And I'm thinking, I'm a young man, and I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, and so I was excited. A friend of mine, we both went together. Do you remember what happened? They couldn't start on time because, anybody remember? I know I've told you this. There's this huge auditorium that seated like 3,000 people in it. And we're in there, and it's kind of late starting. The narrator gets up and he goes, "Excuse me, we're having a problem now because it turns out our speakers are cracked. And so we're trying to fix our cracked speakers." So I looked at my friend and I said, "The speakers are cracked? You mean the two guys that are going to be talking?" And I thought, this is hilarious. I am sending this into Reader's Digest. I'm totally going to get $100 or $10 or whatever they send to people when you think they print your little thing. I was so excited, and I wrote this out and I sent it off to them, and I heard, and what did I get from them? Not a thing. And then some other time I was going through some book, a Reader's Digest book, and I was looking at the little short things they got in there, and lo and behold, somebody says, "We were at a presentation thing, and they said they couldn't start because the speakers were cracked." And I said, "Well, that's my story. And mine actually happened. I bet they just made theirs up." But I was so excited. They finally got up, and he gave his side, he gave his side, and they took turns talking. And I was so disappointed in both of them. I felt like I learned maybe a couple things, but none of them, it really was able to explain it in a way that made sense for me, and I was really disappointed in them. And since that day, I finally decided that, you know what, you can go ahead and try to figure the nuts and bolts of how God does all this, how he creates life and everything, or you can do what the writer of Genesis does, which is celebrate it. You know, I don't really care how I got to where I am today, because I am what I am. And if you change that, how I got here, it changes absolutely nothing to what does that make sense what I just said? You know, I've got an idea of what I am. And the past is the past, the future is the future. But however I got to this point, the travels, the journeys I took, I am here. And I'm trying to deal my best with my relationship with God as I am today. Yeah, we talk about the past. We try to make sense of that. I think, God, where am I going with all this? But he says, let's talk about right now. Who you are and what you are and what I am to you. You know, because that's going to be what takes me into eternity. It's good. This created world is intended to be good, to be very good. Do you see it that way? When you look at a tree, what do you see? Do you see a tree or do you see a tree? Do you see how amazing it is? The physics and the chemistry and all of it goes into, you know, a living thing like a tree. You know, I'm hoping that one of these days we find a tree or something on Titan or some other place in the solar system, and people are going to be doing cartwheels, and I'm going to say, you need to come see this tree in my yard. When the fall comes around, it is the most amazing thing. You found another planet, you found a little tree about this, and you're it's all so glorious, and it's all so amazing. I knew this young lady, she was in high school, and her family was frustrated with her because she despised the outdoors. And her parents were really into hiking and camping and fishing and doing all kinds of outdoor stuff. And she hated everything about it, especially bugs. Could not stand bugs. Never wanted to go. She whined about everything they ever went to do because there's going to be bugs and there's going to be dirt. I'm going to get dirty and there's going to be bugs. And she just would whine and complain about it. And then I think she went off to college, and so I didn't see her for about a year or two. And she shows up, and see, her mother saw me first, and she said, "You are not going to believe what happened to her." And I said, "What?" I said, "She loves the outdoors." I said, "You got to be joking." I mean, she was ready to fight you to keep from having to go outdoors for any reason. And she said, I don't know, something happened and she was forced to be in a group and they were doing stuff. And now she lives for the outdoors. And she sees the beauty and the inspiration and how glorious it is. And I'm thinking, that's what the writer of Genesis wants us to do. To be able to go outside and see this amazing, incredible world. To be inspired by it and see that that it is created along with us. I often think about Jesus. Jesus regularly had to get away from all the stuff that was going on with all the people. Where would he go? He'd go by himself out into the desert. Have you ever been in a desert? And been out in the desert? People here think desert, it's going to be hot and dry, and what's the point? Like I said, once you see the night sky, a few years ago, I went to see my sister, and I'm driving. I left before the sun came up. I'm driving up through New Mexico, and I'm going north, and so the sun starts to come up. And I've never seen a sky like it in my life. The entire sky was on fire. It started out this beautiful dark purple color. And it turned to maroon and orange and yellow. And it went on for it was over an hour. It was so incredible. I don't know how I stayed on the road because I kept looking. I think a couple of times I pulled over just so I could just not worry about going off the road. And I thought, this is the most beautiful sky I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, how much have I missed because I haven't really paid attention to all of the glorious things that are happening around me, the miraculous things. When you look at, you see a piece of dirt. What do you see? A piece of dirt, right? Do you understand how incredible matter is? How many forces are there holding this universe together? This is your physics test for today. There's gravity, electromagnetism, the strong atomic force, and that's right, the weak atomic force. Okay, you got those latter two hold atoms together. You've got gravity and electromagnetism doing everything else, and you realize, in each of those are so precisely oriented, calculated, set in place. If you were to tweak, if you made gravity that much stronger or weaker, or any of the others, the entire universe would come undone. And, research physicists, how is it that these four forces of nature are so profoundly measured to maintain this universe? To me, the more you study matter and energy and all these kinds of things, the more astounding and amazing it becomes. Until finally, and have you ever heard this? You really study the tiniest particles of matter that we can study, they start to act like mind. They don't act like physical objects. You begin to see this universe is so different than what we always thought it would be. I like the statement, the more we learn about this universe, it becomes so strange and bizarre. It's more strange than you're able to imagine. It's stranger than you can imagine. And to me, it just speaks to how profound and amazing all of this was that God did. Could it be that the foundation of true spiritual faith is a sense of awe? Every day when God created something, he goes, now you better be scared because I'm going to hunt you down if you misbehave. But he doesn't. He says, be amazed. It's good. I say it's good. Could it be that to stand and wonder at what God has done is the foundation for our relationship with God for eternity? And that sense of awe and amazement and wonder may be the biggest step to knowing who God is. We come to chapter 2, the heavens and the earth were finished in all their multitude, and on the seventh day, which is what day of the week? Saturday. It's Saturday. These are Hebrew people. The seventh day is Saturday. Okay? The Sabbath. On the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. So what does God do? He says, I want, after you go out and you're going to work just like I did for 6 days, and I want you to give me one day where you can just sit back and look at all you've done and remember who you are, to remember who we are, so that throughout my life on that day I get closer and closer. Anybody know who Pete Conrad was? Pete Conrad. Neil Armstrong was the first guy that walked on the moon. The next Apollo mission in, I think, 1969, Pete Conrad was on that. And he jumped out of that lunar module and was walking around on the moon, and he was looking at the moon, and he's looking up at the earth, and he felt what? He felt sadness. You know why? Like me, he was a space geek. He says, I'm walking on the moon. I am looking at the most beautiful of planets. That is my home. And he said, for the rest of my life, it will never be as good as this. And so he was kind of sad about it. And I thought, I get that. I probably would have said the same thing if I was out there walking on the moon. But I've seen some places on this planet that God has created. This just makes me stand in awe and wonder. And my hope is that, and I'd like to have talked to him, he's no longer with us, but that he could have said, you know what? It just opened up my eyes to who God was and what he is doing. Heavenly Father, my prayer this morning is that when we read about your creative work, that we would find it to be an opportunity to celebrate, to stand in wonder and amazement, and to know that this is nothing compared to what you have for us for eternity. May all this happen in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. Let's turn to our closing hymn, which is number 357. 357. We'll sing the verses 1 and 6, the first and the last. I'll say goodbye to those that are able to join us on Facebook. God bless you all. I hope to see you soon. Bye.